All right, seekers of the otherworldly and unknown legends, welcome back. Last time we dove deep into the shadowy bayous and haunted streets, unearthing the cryptids and monsters that lurk in the legends of New Orleans. But tonight, we are peeling back another layer of this mysterious city, venturing beyond the monstrous and into the mystical. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and prepare to be enchanted as we explore the haunting world of voodoo queens, spectral presences, and the tantalizing whispers of hidden treasure. We will follow the lingering spirit of Marie Laveau, said to still work her magic from her resting place, and unravel the enigmatic legacy of Bayou John. Then, steel yourself as we confront the tormented souls tied to Madame LaLaurie's infamous mansion, and brave the chilling tale of the Axeman of New Orleans. We will even hoist a glass with the ghost of Jean Lafitte, and maybe, just maybe, uncover clues to his legendary buried riches. Finally, we will sink our teeth into the immortal with tales of the mysterious Fille à la Cassette and the aristocratic Jacques Saint-Germain. Join us as we journey into the unknown legends of these 7 real-life historical figures and the enduring mysteries that surround them. Let us cast our circle and invoke the spirit of the one, the only, Marie Laveau. Her name resonates through the heart of New Orleans like a potent chant, a whisper on the wind carrying tales of power, mystery, and an undeniable magic that shaped a city. She was not just a woman, she was an institution, a force of nature, and the undisputed voodoo queen of New Orleans. Born a free woman of color in the early 19th century, Marie Laveau did not just practice voodoo, she redefined it. Her influence stretched far beyond simple grist and spiritual consultations. This woman wielded real power. Imagine this. In a time when society was rigidly stratified by race and class, Laveau, through her spiritual authority, her vast network of informants, often her clients themselves, from enslaved people to wealthy white aristocrats, and her shrewd intelligence, became a significant political and social figure. She knew secrets, she held sway over minds, and her divine advice often had very practical earthly outcomes. She could calm riots, influence legal proceedings, and even secure pardons for those in trouble, all while weaving an intricate web of connections that made her an untouchable figure in the city's power structure. Her reign as Voodoo Queen was not a solitary one, at least not entirely. Legend whispers of her connection to the Voodoo King, Dr. John Bayou, a Senegalese practitioner whose own mystical prowess was undeniable. Their relationship, whether collaborative or competitive, certainly added another layer of intrigue to the voodoo landscape of New Orleans. Was it a partnership of equals, a spiritual alliance, or a dynamic interplay of 2 powerful figures vying for influence? The truth, like many voodoo secrets, remains tantalizingly just out of reach. And then there were her daughters. Marie Laveau II, in particular, carried on her mother's legacy, blurring the lines between the two in the public imagination, making it even harder to separate fact from the rich tapestry of folklore. Some say Marie I simply faded away, while Marie II stepped seamlessly into her shoes, continuing the rituals and maintaining the spiritual grip on the city. Ultimately, Marie Laveau I is said to have died in 1881, and her death itself is shrouded in the same mystery that defined her life. Was it a peaceful passing in her own home, as some accounts suggest? Or did she simply vanish, transcending the mortal coil in a manner befitting a voodoo queen? Even in death, she refused to be ordinary. And so the legend of Marie Laveau does not end with her passing. Oh no, seekers, it merely transforms, taking on an even more ethereal and potent form. Her spirit, they say, never truly left the city she so profoundly influenced. Instead, she became interwoven with the very fabric of New Orleans, a spectral guardian, a mischievous presence, and a powerful force still at play. Tales abound of Marie Laveau's ghost haunting the winding gaslit streets of the French Quarter. Locals and visitors alike have reported fleeting glimpses of a regal woman, often clad in a tignole, that distinctive head wrap she famously wore, gliding silently through darkened alleys or appearing briefly on balconies overlooking Jackson Square. Some describe a faint scent of jasmine and cypress, her favorite offerings, accompanying her spectral appearances. It is said she particularly favors walking around her old home on St. Anne Street or near the historic Congo Square, where she once presided over grand voodoo rituals that drew hundreds. These are not just random sightings. Many believe she is still watching over her city, perhaps even intervening in subtle ways, a silent protector of its unique spirit. But it is in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 where her earthly remains are interred in the famed Glapion family tomb that Marie Laveau's spiritual presence is most intensely felt and actively engaged. This is not just a grave, it is a living altar, a constant testament to her enduring power. Her grave in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 is still one of the most visited sites in New Orleans, adorned with offerings, X marks, and prayers from those who still believe her spirit walks the narrow paths between the tombs, ever ready to grant a wish or cast a powerful spell. Visitors from around the globe flock to her tomb, leaving offerings, beads, flowers, coins, candles, and even small grist bags, in hopes of receiving her blessings or having their wishes granted. The tradition of marking 3 X's on the tomb, spinning around 3 times, and knocking while making a wish is still practiced today, a direct plea to the Voodoo Queen herself. Many claim that if their wish comes true, they return to leave a gift and circle an X to let others know of her continued potency. It bears mentioning, seekers, that this act of X marking is considered by city officials as an act of vandalism, and therefore caution is advised if one wished to perform this ritual. And what about her voodoo activity from beyond the grave? It is said that on certain nights, particularly around St. John's Eve, the veil between worlds thins, and Marie Laveau's spirit is at its most active within the cemetery. Some claim to have heard faint drumming or chanting emanating from the old tombs, or witnessed strange lights dancing amongst the mausoleums. Others speak of a feeling of intense energy or a sudden, unexplained chill when passing her tomb, believing it to be the Voodoo Queen herself, acknowledging their presence. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, there is no denying the palpable energy surrounding her final resting place, a place where the magic of Marie Laveau continues to thrive, her spirit perpetually intertwined with the mystical heart of New Orleans. Her life was a masterpiece of mystery, and her legacy, centuries later, continues to thrive, proving that some spirits simply refuse to be contained. And so, seekers, whether her spirit dances on the wind or answers whispers from her tomb, the legacy of Marie Laveau remains a powerful, living force in New Orleans. Her story reminds us that some legends are not just tales of the past, but vital threads in the ongoing tapestry of a city's soul. All right, seekers, we have explored the reign of the Voodoo Queen, Marie Laveau. But no tale of New Orleans voodoo would be complete without acknowledging her powerful contemporary, a figure some whispered was even more potent in certain circles, Dr. Jean Montanet, better known as Bayou John. So, who was he? Unlike Marie Laveau, who was born free in New Orleans, Dr. John's story began far across the Atlantic. He was born in Senegal, West Africa, likely into a lineage with deep spiritual traditions. Kidnapped and brought to the Americas as an enslaved person, he eventually found himself in New Orleans, carrying with him the rich spiritual heritage of his homeland. His true name was said to be Jean Montanet, but he quickly became known as Dr. John due to his healing abilities, and Bayou John for his connection to the swampy, mystical outskirts of the city. How did he purchase his freedom? This is a testament to his innate power and ingenuity. New Orleans in the early 19th century, while still a slave society, had avenues for enslaved people to earn and save money, often through specialized skills or by hiring themselves out. Dr. John, even while enslaved, began practicing his traditional African spiritual arts, offering healing, charms, and spiritual guidance. His reputation grew, and with the money he earned from these practices, he was eventually able to purchase his own freedom. This act alone speaks volumes about his influence and the value placed on his spiritual services, even in those oppressive times. Once free, Dr. John set up shop, primarily operating out of a small cabin in the Bayou country, just outside the city proper. What did he do? He became a renowned root doctor, a healer, and a formidable spiritual practitioner. People from all walks of life, enslaved and free, black and white, rich and poor, sought his counsel. He was known for his potent grist bags, powerful healing remedies, and his ability to conjure spirits and cast spells. His practices were deeply rooted in African traditions, often involving drumming, singing, and complex rituals, sometimes conducted in secluded bayou clearings or at his cabin. In what ways was he considered more powerful than Marie Laveau? While Marie Laveau was undeniably the public face and political force of voodoo in New Orleans, with her elegant parlors and strategic social connections, Dr. John was seen by many as holding the deeper, more ancient, and arguably more raw spiritual power. He was viewed as a direct conduit to older, more intense African spiritual forces. People went to Marie for charms and influence. They went to Dr. John for hardcore healing, curses, and protection that required a connection to primal, untamed energies. He was the one you sought for truly dire circumstances, for justice, or for vengeance. His reputation for powerful curses and unbreakable protections often overshadowed Marie's more refined approach. What was his relation to Marie Laveau? Their relationship is fascinating and complex, often depicted as a dynamic interplay of respect, rivalry, and perhaps even a mentorship at some point. Some legends suggest Marie Laveau actually studied under Dr. John early in her career, learning some of the deeper secrets of the craft from him. Others paint them as powerful rivals, each commanding their own loyal following. Regardless, there was an undeniable professional and spiritual connection. They were two poles of the same powerful spiritual current flowing through New Orleans, each wielding immense influence in their own distinctive styles. So what happened to him? Like many figures of his era whose lives were not documented by official society, Dr. John's end is also shrouded in mystery. He simply faded from the public eye. Legends say he lived to a ripe old age, eventually choosing to disappear back into the bayous he loved, perhaps retreating to an unknown place of power to live out his days in peace, or perhaps transcending the mortal coil in a manner befitting a master of spiritual arts. He is said to have died around 1869 or 1870, but again, no definitive record confirms it. For many, his spirit, like the ancient energies he commanded, still resides within the winding waterways and dense foliage of the Louisiana Bayou, a watchful, powerful presence. Dr. John Montanet, Bayou John, stands as a testament to the profound spiritual resilience and power brought from Africa, shaping the unique and potent voodoo tradition of New Orleans. He was a king in his own right, reigning not from a public parlor, but from the mysterious heart of the bayou. Seekers, you can bet that a figure as profoundly powerful and enigmatic as Bayou John would not just vanish without leaving a spiritual imprint on the very land he commanded. While Marie Laveau's hauntings are often seen as more directly tied to her tomb and public appearances, Bayou John's spiritual presence is said to be far more elemental, woven into the very fabric of the natural world around New Orleans, particularly the bayous and swamps he held so dear. The legends of Bayou John's hauntings are not about a fleeting glimpse of a figure in a tignon like Marie Laveau. Instead, they speak of a more profound environmental haunting, a spiritual resonance that emanates from the places he practiced and ruled. The whispers of the bayou. Many who venture deep into the Louisiana bayous and swamps, especially around the areas where his cabin was rumored to be, report hearing disembodied whispers, faint drumming, or even snatches of ancient African chants carried on the wind through the cypress trees. The whispers of the bayou. Many who venture deep into the Louisiana bayous and swamps, especially around the areas where his cabin was rumored to be, report hearing disembodied whispers, faint drumming, or even snatches of ancient African chants carried on the wind through the cypress trees. It is believed that these are the echoes of Bayou John's powerful rituals, forever imprinted on the landscape, continuing to resonate with the spiritual energy he invoked. Lights in the swamp. There are numerous tales of strange, unexplained lights, often described as ethereal glows or flickering orbs, dancing among the moss-draped trees and across the dark waters of the swamp at night. These swamp lights are sometimes attributed to restless spirits, but many locals attribute them specifically to Bayou John, believing them to be manifestations of his powerful spirit still conducting his work or simply watching over his dominion. Animal omens. Being a root doctor deeply connected to nature, legends suggest that certain animals acting unusually in the bayou might be signs of Bayou John's presence. A sudden unexplained stillness of all wildlife, or the unexpected appearance of creatures not native to a specific area, are sometimes interpreted as spiritual omens linked to the Voodoo King. The presence at Congo Square. While Marie Laveau held grand public rituals here, Congo Square was also a spiritual epicenter for all voodoo practitioners. Some say that on certain nights, particularly during powerful lunar phases or on important voodoo feast days, you can feel a distinct, ancient, and almost heavy spiritual energy in the air there. A sense of immense power, often attributed to the collective spirits of those who practice there, with Bayou John's influence being a significant part of that collective. Unexplained healing or curses. Even today, people who visit New Orleans and seek out spiritual aid or vengeance sometimes attribute unexpected outcomes, be it a sudden recovery from illness or a swift turn of bad luck, to the lingering, unseen influence of Bayou John. His reputation for both potent healing and powerful curses continues to echo in the spiritual beliefs of the city. So, while you might not see Bayou John strolling down Bourbon Street, his haunting is said to be a deeper, more primal force, a spiritual current that still flows through the very heart of the natural, mystical New Orleans, reminding us of the ancient power he commanded. But not all spirits linger with the benevolent grace of Marie Laveau or the metaphysical prowess of Bayou John. As we leave the hallowed grounds of St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 and the muddy bayou where Dr. John called home, we turn our gaze to a much darker chapter in New Orleans history, a place where horror was etched into the very foundations, and where the cries of the tormented are said to echo still. Prepare yourselves, for we are about to delve into the chilling history and enduring hauntings of the infamous LaLaurie Mansion. Delphine LaLaurie, like many wealthy Creole families in New Orleans during that era, was indeed a slave owner from a young age. This was tragically common practice in the antebellum South. However, the manner in which she treated her enslaved people diverged dramatically from even the harsh norms of the time. Initially, there were whispers and rumors, a general unease among her neighbors about the disappearances of servants or the harsh treatment observed. She was known for being exceptionally cruel, even by the standards of a society that condoned slavery. But for a long time, these were just whispers, easily dismissed or ignored by a society that often turned a blind eye to the abuses within the private domain of a wealthy household. The full horrifying truth of the LaLaurie Mansion exploded into public awareness on April 10, 1834. It was not a direct report of abuse that brought it to light, but rather a catastrophic event. A fire broke out in the kitchen of the LaLaurie residence. When emergency responders and neighbors rushed in to help, they made a gruesome discovery that would forever brand the LaLaurie name with infamy. The source of the fire was a 70-year-old enslaved cook, whom Delphine had chained to the stove. The official story is that the cook deliberately set the fire, choosing self-immolation rather than face further torture or punishment from her mistress. This act of desperate defiance was what drew attention to the mansion's dark secrets. As people battled the blaze and moved through the house, they stumbled upon a locked room in the attic that Delphine had vehemently tried to keep secret. When the door was finally forced open, the true scope of her depravity was revealed. Inside, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Several enslaved people were discovered chained, mutilated, and horribly tortured. Some were barely alive, bearing the marks of prolonged and sadistic abuse. Accounts describe victims with eyes gouged out, mouths sewn shut, limbs broken, and some even having undergone crude, horrifying experiments. It was a chamber of horrors, a ghastly tableau of human suffering that defied comprehension. The community, upon seeing these atrocities, erupted in a furious mob. The sheer barbarity of the discovery was so extreme that it shocked even a society accustomed to the brutality of slavery. The mob stormed the house, tearing it apart in their rage. So while the initial alarm was a fire, it was the chained cook's desperate act, her ultimate sacrifice, that unveiled the monstrous cruelty hidden within the walls of the LaLaurie Mansion, exposing a level of depravity that haunts New Orleans to this very day. After the fire exposed her horrifying secrets, Delphine LaLaurie and her family, including Dr. Louis LaLaurie, faced the wrath of the enraged New Orleans mob. They managed to escape the city, reportedly fleeing by carriage to a waiting ship and sailing to Mobile, Alabama, and then eventually making their way to Paris, France. Delphine LaLaurie never returned to New Orleans. Her life after the escape remains somewhat shrouded in mystery, with conflicting accounts of her exact whereabouts and activities. However, it is generally believed that she lived out the rest of her days in Paris. The exact date and circumstances of her death are also a subject of some historical debate, but the most widely accepted account states that she died in Paris on December 7th, 1842. A copper plate containing this information was later discovered in Paris and brought back to New Orleans, where it was eventually placed in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, not far from the very city she so infamously terrorized. Even with such a horrific history, the LaLaurie Mansion, like many grand structures in a bustling city, was rebuilt. Why? Well, property in the heart of the French Quarter was and still is prime real estate. Despite the gruesome events, the economic value of the building and its location often outweighed the desire to tear down such a substantial structure. Think about it: a prime address, a large building, right in the thick of things. It's too valuable to simply abandon, even if its past was drenched in infamy. The rebuilding efforts primarily aimed to repair the damage from the fire and the mob, restoring its structural integrity and aesthetic grandeur. While the exterior might have remained largely the same to preserve the architectural style of the quarter, it is hard to say what internal changes were made. Perhaps some rooms were reconfigured or sections rebuilt, but the overall footprint and imposing presence remained. However, owning the LaLaurie Mansion proved to be a persistent struggle. Imagine trying to live or work in a place so deeply associated with terror. Throughout its history, the mansion has changed hands countless times. Many owners found it difficult to maintain residence there for long, often citing unsettling experiences, strange noises, and an oppressive atmosphere. It is almost as if the building itself resisted any attempts at normalcy. Over the years, the mansion has served various purposes, each one seemingly unable to shake off its dark reputation. It has been a public school, a furniture store, a conservatory of music, and even apartment buildings. Each venture, despite the prestige of the address, eventually failed or moved on, contributing to the mansion's legend as a place no one can truly call home. Today, after a series of high-profile owners, including actor Nicolas Cage for a period, the LaLaurie Mansion is back to being a private residence. It is not open to the public for tours, though it remains a constant point of fascination and a mandatory stop on any ghost tour of New Orleans. Its imposing facade on Royal Street still stands, a silent, chilling monument to the horrors it once contained. Its dark past an inseparable part of its present. All right, seekers, if the history of Madame LaLaurie was not chilling enough, prepare to have your blood run cold as we delve into the relentless legends of hauntings that cling to the very stones of the LaLaurie Mansion. This is not just a place with a dark past, it is a place where the past refuses to die. The LaLaurie Mansion is widely considered one of the most haunted locations in New Orleans, and perhaps in all of America. For nearly 2 centuries, accounts of paranormal activity have poured from its forbidding walls. The most frequently reported sightings are tragically those of the enslaved people who suffered and perished there. Visitors and past residents have described hearing desperate cries, moans, and the rattling of chains echoing from empty rooms, particularly from the upper floors and the attic, the very places where Delphine's unspeakable acts were committed. One of the most persistent and heartbreaking sightings is that of a young girl, often believed to be the one who jumped to her death from the rooftop during a whipping. Her ghostly figure is said to appear, sometimes falling, sometimes just standing, staring with a look of profound sorrow. Other witnesses have reported seeing the spectral forms of chained figures, sometimes reaching out as if still pleading for release. Poltergeist activity is also common. Objects reportedly fly across rooms, doors slam shut with no apparent cause, and strange cold spots appear and vanish without explanation. Beyond the enslaved victims, there are even whispers of Delphine LaLaurie herself returning to her house of horrors. Some accounts speak of a shadowy female figure radiating an aura of malevolence, seen peering from windows or gliding through hallways. Could it be Delphine, forever bound to the scene of her crimes? Perhaps reliving her cruelties, or simply unable to find peace? The mansion seems to radiate an oppressive energy, a palpable sense of dread that even the most skeptical visitors have reported feeling upon entering or even just standing outside its imposing facade. Many who have lived or worked in the building through its various incarnations have reported strange odors, disembodied voices, and terrifying nightmares. Even during its brief period as actor Nicolas Cage's residence, he reportedly experienced unsettling phenomena, though he typically remains tight-lipped about the specifics. Ghost tours, though unable to enter the private residence, often pause outside where guides share these chilling tales, and sometimes those who linger swear they catch a glimpse of something unexplainable within its windows. So, seekers, the LaLaurie Mansion stands as a stark, terrifying reminder that some wounds run so deep they scar the very essence of a place, trapping echoes of pain and suffering for generations to come. Let us turn our attention now to another chilling chapter of New Orleans history that is disturbingly real, yet equally shrouded in mystery. The terrifying saga of the Axeman of New Orleans. Who was he? The chilling truth is, we do not know. The Axeman was an unidentified serial killer who terrorized New Orleans and surrounding communities, primarily between May 1918 and October 1919. He was never caught, never positively identified, and his true motives remain one of the most baffling cold cases in American criminal history. He was a phantom, a brutal force that emerged from the shadows and vanished back into them, leaving a trail of blood and terror. What is his story? The Axeman's story is one of calculated brutality and psychological warfare. His modus operandi was consistent. He would break into homes, usually those of Italian-American grocers, in the dead of night. He would often remove a panel from a back door or pick a lock to gain entry. Once inside, he would attack his victims, often while they slept, using an axe, sometimes one he brought with him, sometimes one he found in their own homes. He killed at least 6 people and severely injured many others. What made the Axeman particularly terrifying was not just his violence, but his bizarre communication. On March 13, 1919, a letter, allegedly from the Axeman himself, was published in New Orleans newspapers. In this chilling missive, the author claims to be a demon, an avenging spirit, not a human being. He declared he would strike again at 12:15 a.m. on the night of March 19th, but he would spare anyone who was listening to jazz music at that exact moment. He wrote, "One thing is certain, and that is that all of you who have been playing jazz music on the night of the aforesaid Tuesday, March 19th, will be spared. If a man will play a jazz number at the time mentioned in his home or saloon of jazz, then in comes the Axeman." The city, consumed by fear, erupted in a cacophony of jazz music that night. Orchestras played in dance halls, bands blared from homes, and professional and amateur musicians filled the air with music. Miraculously, no one was murdered that night. Was he ever caught? No. Despite extensive police investigations, nationwide appeals, and even the bizarre public challenge from the Axeman himself, the killer's identity remained elusive. The attacks abruptly stopped in October 1919, leaving police and citizens alike to wonder who he was and why he suddenly ceased his murderous spree. Theories abound. Some believe he was killed by a vengeful victim's family, others that he simply left New Orleans, and some even suggest he was a cult leader or a practitioner of dark magic. The case remains officially unsolved. Is he believed to haunt the city to this day? Absolutely, seekers. A mystery as profound and terrifying as the Axeman's leaves a powerful imprint. While less of a classic spectral haunting, the Axeman's presence is often invoked in a different, more chilling way. Lingering fear. The most potent haunting is the lingering psychological scar he left on the city. The memory of his terror, the unanswered questions, and the chilling jazz letter still resonate, particularly in the older neighborhoods. Phantom music. Some locals claim that on quiet, still nights, especially in the French Quarter or old residential areas, they can hear faint, disembodied jazz music emanating from nowhere. This is sometimes attributed to the spirits of those who played to ward him off, or perhaps even the phantom echo of the night the city danced for its life. Shadowy figures. There are occasionally reports of shadowy tall figures glimpsed in alleyways or near old Italian-owned buildings, particularly by those who know the history. These are not always traditional ghosts, but more like a manifestation of the collective fear and the unknown. Disturbed energy. For many paranormal enthusiasts, the Axeman's reign left a dark, disturbed energy in certain parts of the city, a lingering sense of menace that can be felt by sensitive individuals. The Axeman of New Orleans remains a terrifying legend, a testament to the fact that not all monsters are supernatural. Sometimes the most frightening creatures are the ones that walk among us, leaving only questions and fear in their wake. All right, seekers, let us take a quick breather from the macabre stories of torture and murder. Before we dive headfirst into the pirate lore and hidden gold, we want to give a huge shout out to our fantastic sponsor, Dubby. You know, exploring otherworldly legends, diving into dark histories, and searching for unknown treasures can be exhausting work. That is where Dubby comes in. They've got an amazing line of hydration and energy-powdered drink additives that keep us fueled and focused, whether we are researching ancient texts or chasing down ghost stories. No jitters, just clean, sustained energy and awesome flavors. If you are looking to boost your focus and energy, or just stay hydrated while you are seeking your own legends, you can support the Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends podcast and get a nice discount. Just head over to w.gg and use our special code SOULFILES at checkout to snag yourself a deal. Trust us, it is pretty solid stuff. Now, with our energy levels recharged, let us get back to the good stuff. Fueled by Dubby, we cast off from the haunted shores of the LaLaurie Mansion and set sail into the turbulent waters of history, where we meet one of New Orleans' most enigmatic and celebrated figures, Jean Lafitte. Now, where was Lafitte from? That is actually part of his mystique. His origins are shrouded in a bit of mystery and conflicting accounts, but many historians believe he was born in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, around 1780, or possibly even in France itself and Bordeaux. What is clear is that he and his older brother Pierre eventually made their way to Louisiana in the early 19th century, drawn by the opportunities and perhaps the lax enforcement of the bustling port city of New Orleans. Jean Lafitte was no ordinary sailor. He was a complex figure, often labeled a pirate, but more accurately described as a privateer or buccaneer. He and his brother led a formidable fleet of ships and a band of loyal, hardened men based in the Barataria Bay, just south of New Orleans. From this strategic swampy hideout, they operated a massive smuggling enterprise. They would capture ships, often Spanish vessels, under the guise of privateering, essentially government-sanctioned piracy, and then fence the stolen goods through an elaborate network in New Orleans. Lafitte became incredibly wealthy and powerful through this illicit trade, often selling goods at prices far below legitimate merchants, much to the delight of the local populace and the frustration of customs officials. He lived a life of danger, daring, and immense fortune, becoming a local legend long before the War of 1812. And speaking of that war seekers, you might remember from a previous episode how crucial Lafitte's role became in the Battle of New Orleans. As the British prepared to invade, General Andrew Jackson, the commander of the American forces, was initially wary of Lafitte. He saw him as a criminal, a pirate, and refused his initial offers of assistance. Jackson even sent forces to destroy Lafitte's Baratarian stronghold. However, as the British invasion became imminent and their forces landed near New Orleans, Lafitte once again offered his unique services. He possessed not only a fleet of seasoned fighters, but also an intimate knowledge of the treacherous bayou terrain and, crucially, a large cache of gunpowder and cannonballs. Against the advice of many, Andrew Jackson, in a move of desperate pragmatism, reluctantly accepted Lafitte's offer. This alliance proved to be a stroke of genius. Lafitte's men, skilled marksmen and fearless fighters, along with his vital supplies, played a pivotal role in securing the stunning American victory against the British in January 1815. Despite their initial distrust, Jackson and Lafitte forged an unlikely, albeit temporary, partnership born of necessity, showcasing Lafitte's deep loyalty to New Orleans, even if it was a city he simultaneously exploited. For his service, Lafitte and his men were pardoned by President James Madison, transforming the notorious pirate into a national hero, at least for a brief, shining moment. After his pivotal role in the Battle of New Orleans and his subsequent pardon, his story, like the bayou itself, gets a bit murky and delightfully legendary. How and when did Lafitte die? Here's where the mystery really kicks in. The truth is, no one definitively knows how or when Jean Lafitte died. After the War of 1812, his pardon did not mean he retired from his life of privateering and smuggling. He tried to go legitimate for a bit in New Orleans, but old habits die hard. He soon established a new pirate kingdom on Galveston Island off the coast of Texas, continuing his illicit trade. However, by 1820, the U.S. Navy forced him out. From there, his movements became legendary rather than documented fact. The most widely accepted theory is that he continued his privateering activities in the Gulf of Mexico, preying on Spanish ships, and died sometime between 1823 and 1826, possibly from a fever in Yucatan, Mexico, or in a naval battle. But his body was never recovered, and no official record confirms his demise, leaving his end as enigmatic as his beginnings. Why two bars named after him? You might have noticed that New Orleans proudly boasts not one, but two establishments claiming the name Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop or similar. The most famous one, on Bourbon Street, is often cited as the oldest continually operating bar in the United States and is said to have been Lafitte's secret base or an illegal front for his smuggling operations. The presence of two bars, both claiming a connection, speaks to Lafitte's enduring legendary status. People want to believe they are drinking in a place touched by the infamous privateer, and the myth sells. The blacksmith shop is particularly iconic because it is one of the few remaining original 18th century French colonial structures in the French Quarter. Its dim, rustic interior certainly evokes the right kind of shadowy history. The legend of his lost treasure. Oh, the treasure. This is perhaps the most tantalizing part of the Lafitte legend. Throughout his career, Lafitte amassed an incredible fortune from his smuggling and privateering ventures. When he was forced to abandon his strongholds, first in Barataria and then in Galveston, he did not just walk away from his riches. Stories abound of Lafitte burying vast amounts of gold, silver, jewels, and other valuable goods in various secret locations across the Gulf Coast. Tales whisper of chests brimming with Spanish doubloons hiding in the Louisiana bayous, buried on remote islands off Texas, or stashed away somewhere in the dense swamps he knew so intimately. Despite countless expeditions and treasure hunters over the centuries, no significant portion of Lafitte's legendary treasure has ever officially been found. It remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of American folklore, fueling dreams of discovery to this very day. His alleged haunting. And finally, the ghost of Jean Lafitte. It would not be New Orleans without a good haunting, especially for a figure as iconic as Lafitte. The most prominent sightings, unsurprisingly, occur at the legendary Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop on Bourbon Street. Patrons and employees have reported seeing a tall, shadowy figure in 19th century attire, often accompanied by the faint scent of cigar smoke, leaning against the fireplace or standing near the bar before vanishing. Some describe a feeling of being watched or a sudden drop in temperature. It is said he is still keeping an eye on his old stomping grounds, perhaps guarding the secrets within its ancient walls, or simply enjoying the lively atmosphere he once knew. Other accounts claim to have seen his spectral ship sailing silently across the bayou at night, or heard phantom cannon fire and the sounds of a swashbuckling crew in the desolate areas where his hideout once stood. Lafitte, it seems, is a privateer even in death, a restless spirit tied to the lands and waters where he built his empire. All right, seekers, now let us pull back the veil on a truly eerie chapter of New Orleans history, one that blends immigration, faith, and a chilling touch of the supernatural, the legend of the Casket Girls, or as some call them, the Coffin Girls. Who were they? The Casket Girls, or filles à la cassette in French, were young, orphaned, or impoverished French women sent to Louisiana in the 18th century, primarily between 1728 and 1751 by the French government. Their purpose was to provide wives for the male colonists, soldiers, and settlers in the fledgling colony, many of whom were struggling to build a life without female companions. The idea was to help stabilize the population and encourage the growth of families in the distant French territory. Why were they called this? This is where the legend gets its name. Each girl was reportedly given a small wooden trunk or box, a cassette in French, containing her dowry and personal belongings. These trunks were said to be narrow and elongated, resembling nothing so much as a small coffin. This stark imagery, combined with their arrival in a new, unfamiliar land, quickly fueled whispers and dark speculations, giving birth to their unsettling moniker. What is the legend? The most chilling and enduring legend surrounding the Casket Girls is that they were, in fact, vampires. The story goes that these pale, frail-looking girls arrived with their coffin-like boxes, which were not filled with dowries, but with their vampire necessities, soil from their homeland, or perhaps even their slumbering vampire forms themselves. Their anemic appearances, a result of the long, arduous journey across the Atlantic, was misinterpreted as a sign of their true undead nature. The legend claims they had a strange aversion to sunlight, rarely went out during the day, and were only seen at night. Whispers also tell of strange disappearances, unexplained deaths, and livestock found drained of blood after their arrival. The Ursuline nuns, who housed these girls in their convent until they could be married, were supposedly aware of their true nature and sealed the windows of the attic where they stayed with holy relics, never to be opened, to contain the creatures within. What is believed to have happened to them? According to the vampire legend, some casket girls found husbands and slowly integrated into society, continuing their nocturnal habits in secret. Others, those who perhaps could not adapt or were too dangerous, were believed to have been contained and eventually died out or were trapped forever within the sealed attic of the Ursuline convent. The legend is that the true evil of New Orleans is hidden within those sealed windows, waiting. What really happened to them? The reality is far less supernatural, but equally poignant. The Casket Girls were indeed real, and they arrived in New Orleans, housed by the Ursuline nuns. They were often young, unmarried, and given a dowry to encourage marriage and settlement. Their pale appearance was likely due to the lengthy, often brutal transatlantic voyage, and their cloistered existence within the convent was typical for women of their status and time. There is no historical evidence that they were vampires, or that any unusual deaths occurred upon their arrival. The sealed attic windows of the old Ursuline convent are actually just dormer windows, likely nailed shut to prevent easy access for mischievous boys or for structural integrity over time. The legend developed over generations, a fantastical explanation for a series of ordinary, if somewhat unsettling, historical details, magnified New Orleans love for good, Gothic tales. Are there any legends of them still appearing in New Orleans? Oh, absolutely. The old Ursuline convent, the oldest building in the Mississippi Valley and where the Casket Girls were housed, is said to be one of the most haunted locations in New Orleans. While the Casket Girls themselves are not typically seen as full-bodied apparitions, their spectral presence is keenly felt. Visitors and employees within the convent have reported chilling cold spots, sudden unexplained drops in temperature, especially near the infamous sealed attic windows, whispers and disembodied voices, muffled sounds of young women talking or sighing, often heard from the upper floors, shadow figures, fleeting glimpses of shadowy forms, darting through hallways or peeking from windows, feelings of unease. Many describe an overwhelming sense of being watched or a palpable sadness and dread when in certain parts of the convent, particularly the attic. The legend of the Casket Girls lives on, a haunting mix of historical fact and sensational folklore, forever intertwining the arrival of hopeful young women with the dark, seductive allure of the vampire myth in the heart of the Crescent City. All right, Seekers, just when you thought we had rounded up all the supernatural residents of New Orleans, we have one final guest star, a figure shrouded in even deeper mystery, one whose very existence blurs the lines between history, folklore, and the truly impossible. Prepare to meet the enigmatic, the immortal, or so they say, Jacques Saint-Germain. Who was he? That is the million-dollar question, and one that does not have a simple answer. The historical record suggests he was a wealthy, charismatic, and incredibly handsome man who appeared in New Orleans in the early 1900s. He presented himself as a French nobleman, charming society with his impeccable manners, vast wealth, and seemingly ageless appearance. Where did he come from? Ah, this is where the legends truly begin. The historical Count of Saint-Germain was a European alchemist, composer, and adventurer who was prominent in 18th century European courts. He was renowned for his claims of immortality, his vast knowledge, and his mysterious ability to appear wealthy without any known source of income. Rumors followed him for centuries, with sightings reported across different eras and continents. So when a man named Jacques Saint-Germain with similar characteristics surfaced in New Orleans, the Whisper Network went wild. Was he the same immortal count, a descendant, or something far more sinister? What did he do in New Orleans? Our Jacques Saint-Germain swiftly integrated himself into the city's elite social circles. He was known for his lavish parties, his profound intellect, and a strange aversion to certain foods and drinks. He rarely ate in public and preferred red wine that some claimed looked suspiciously like blood. His uncanny knowledge of historical events, often spoken as if he had witnessed them firsthand, only fueled the growing speculation about his true nature. He lived a life of quiet extravagance, always observed, always just a little out of reach. What was his history? The legend of Jacques Saint-Germain in New Orleans, specifically, draws heavily from the European count's purported history of immortality. He was said to possess an elixir of life, or perhaps simply was one of the undead. Stories circulated that he was seen in different historical periods, never aging, always wealthy, always mysterious. In New Orleans, these old tales found new life, with local gossip transforming him into either an ancient, wise being who had seen centuries unfold, or, more terrifyingly, a vampire who preyed on the unsuspecting. Finally, what happened to him? Like his predecessor, Jacques Saint-Germain did not die in any conventional sense. The legends say his time in New Orleans came to an abrupt and dramatic end one night in 1902. A woman, supposedly a prostitute, was found near death after falling, or being pushed, from his apartment balcony. She claimed that Saint-Germain had attacked her, revealing fangs and attempting to drink her blood. When the police investigated, they found his apartment eerily deserted. Saint-Germain had vanished without a trace, leaving behind no forwarding address, no explanation, only the chilling whispers of a near victim and the lingering questions that solidified his place in New Orleans' supernatural pantheon. Was he truly a vampire, an immortal, or just a very cunning con man who knew how to make a grand exit? The city still wonders. And with that final eerie twist, Seekers, our dive into the legendary figures of New Orleans draws to a close. We have journeyed through the realms of voodoo queens, tormented spirits, swashbuckling pirates, and now, perhaps, even the truly undead. The Crescent City, it seems, truly holds a monopoly on the otherworldly and unknown. All right, Seekers, what a journey it has been. From the powerful voodoo magic of Marie Laveau and Dr. John, whose spirits still grant wishes and cure ailments from the beyond, to the chilling, tortured echoes within the infamous LaLaurie Mansion and the lingering fear of the Axeman, and the swashbuckling mystery of Jean Lafitte's ghost and his hidden gold, all the way to the possibly immortal Casket Girls and the enigmatic Jacques Saint-Germain. New Orleans has once again proven itself to be a city unlike any other, a place where legends do not just live in books, but walk the very streets. We hope you have enjoyed delving into these otherworldly and unknown legends with us. If you did, please do us a huge favor. Like this episode, share it with your fellow truth seekers, and subscribe to our channel wherever you are listening. You can find us and all our past adventures on YouTube, Spotify, and through our official website, www.soulseekersunknown.com. And if you have had an encounter with the unexplained or know of a legend you think we absolutely must cover, send us an email. We would love to hear from you at soulfilearchives@gmail.com. Remember, new episodes of Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends drop every Monday at 6 p.m. Before we sign off, we have a very special announcement. For all our seekers who want to connect with us in person We are thrilled to tell you that seekers of otherworldly and unknown legends will be live and in person at our very own vendor booth. Come find us in Grafton, West Virginia for the Grafton Monster Festival on June 12th and 13th. We would love to meet you, chat about cryptids, ghosts, and everything in between. Until next time, fellow seekers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and always stay curious. Good night.